On this episode of ResiWeek, getting to know Tuya, 8K's new association, CES is a smart home takeover, and Ring is watching you. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek, episode 154, 3 Seashells.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Access Networks.
Welcome to ResiWeek. This is your weekly wrap-up of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott, for AVNation.tv. And today, I'm pleased to be joined by three good friends of mine who were all at CES, unlike myself. First, we have Jason Knott. He is the editor of CE Pro. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Then we have Mark Corbin. He is the VP of Distribution Markets for Venco. How are you, sir?
Good, Matt. Always good to be on the show. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Then we have Avi Rosenthal. He is the managing partner at CE IoT Partners. How are you, sir?
Happy to be here, Matt. Thanks so much for having me today.
Thank you guys for joining us. I'm sure this is a fun day after just coming back from CES. So on that note, let's jump right into our first story from CES. If you didn't guess, this is going to be a pretty CES heavy show. Tuya is at CES 2019, and they are the biggest IoT framework company that nobody in the U.S. has ever heard of. This comes to us from CE Pro and the one and only Julie Jacobson. If you don't know Tuya, don't worry, I didn't either until I read this story. They are perhaps the biggest home automation company that nobody stateside or in North America has really ever heard of. This Chinese giant has over 30,000 IoT embedded devices from over 3,000 manufacturers. And, pre-show kind of covering our stories, I went around the horn real quick because, again, I had never heard of these guys. Luckily, everyone else here really has. Jason, I do want to start with you on this one because obviously you guys cover this space, but maybe not, you may not be in it as heavily as Avi is. Was Tuya on your radar, or was this a revelation to you the same way it was to me?
Yeah, until I walked by the Monster booth and Central Hall, I had never heard of it. And that was the end of the first day of the show. And I walked by and saw it, but I was completely unfamiliar with it. But it kind of goes to the same trend. I think we've talked about this before in previous ResiWeeks of here's a company that's exposing IoT and smart home automation at a lower cost to bring in more down market players into the space. Ultimately, is that going to be a good thing? Let's hope so. I think you and I have talked about this in the past that I see a lot of the custom integrators migrating to the higher end of the channel. So I don't know where Tuya fits into that space other than they openly say that they're at the low cost of the scale here. So
Mark, as a manufacturer, let me ask you this. They, essentially pride themselves on being a very low price of entry for creating smart home products. And in turn, that gives just a ridiculously cheap price for the end user. Where is the value for manufacturers who traditionally work within our channel to go after or work with Tuya to create, again, some of these really cost-effective products?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. When I saw the article, I found out right away that we were going to be talking about them. I've actually been working with them since November. What's really unique is, to Jason's point, they're not this big, huge manufacturer that we know about in the U.S., but they make ease of access to any of these smart devices. So their chipset allows you basically to, if you're good at manufacturing something that could be controlled via Google, Alexa, they have an incredible chipset and platform for you as a manufacturer to take to them and assist you in doing all this. It's pretty unique, and for the licensing fee that they're offering, it's very worthwhile. Not to mention, there's a lot of devices on the market, simple products like my own from matrices that don't get incorporated in smart devices right now. So I think there's plenty of areas where these guys make a great fit within the market, especially in the AV market too.
Very good. Avi, this is your ballpark. This is where you play. Obviously, you've known of them for quite a while. What differentiates them from any other IoT manufacturer? And more importantly, is there any discernible difference that we as integrators or our clients would ever see or know about?
So, Matt, I've been watching these guys for quite a while now. If you attend any of the Asian sourcing shows, you get exposed to Tuya because give you a little bit of history. They were originally formed a couple 3 years ago to tackle the 5 largest builders in China. And so the idea was to bring IoT connected devices to those 5 biggest builders in a uniform fashion. And what they did was they developed a software platform. So the first thing is that they are a software platform, right? They're a back end. They're not necessarily a manufacturer. They don't make the devices themselves. What they do is they take off-the-shelf Wi-Fi and Bluetooth chips, build them into modules, and then sell those modules to the device manufacturers for integration into lighting devices, small appliances, all kinds of different controllers and things. And the idea being that right now it's Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and the manufacturers don't have to write any software. They don't have to write any firmware. They follow the API that's given to them by Tuya. They integrate onto their product, and instantly that product is compatible with the apps and everything that's available on the Tuya software platform. When Tuya realized how successful it was with these builders, they branched out. And before you knew it, they've got 3,000 manufacturers, and those numbers vary, right? I mean, I've seen them claim up to 10,000 manufacturers because there are all these little factories in China. But it's quite revolutionary because if you think about it, there are dozens of software platforms on the market today, right? Dozens of companies that pride themselves software as a service. You buy the software platform from them, and then you typically, as the manufacturer, you pay per month per connection. Tuya, on the other hand, their business model is buy the module, plug it in, and you're done. No monthly charges, no monthly fees to the manufacturer, no monthly fees to the homeowner, the consumer, the apartment dweller, what have you. They're going to support this thing. They're going to give you updates and build out the platform for no monthly fee. That's why companies like Monster, when they went out and decided that they wanted to get into the marketplace, looked at them as an alternative, because now Monster has the ability to build out without necessarily charging a monthly recurring revenue. Now, this is all very mid-market to low-end stuff, right? The high-end integrator, I'm not thinking that they're really going to be affected by Tuya all that much. Certainly not the Control4s and the Crestrons and the Savants of the world. It's a completely different play. Tuya gives a company like Energizer, for instance. Energizer Licensing also announced at CES that they were going to have a group of connected devices, and they are using Tuya as their back end. I don't imagine that the Energizer brand is going to appeal to a high-end AV user, right? I mean, let's face it. It's a different world out there. There's a lot of room in the market. It's not to take away from anybody or to talk ill of anybody, but the average high-end integrator is not going to start to install Pink Bunny devices in a Crestron setup. I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Very good.
Hey, Matt, let me follow up with Mark on that. So does the Tuya platform, Mark, give a smaller manufacturer like Vanco an advantage when you're trying to compete out there in the world against the Googles and the Amazons and those sorts of guys to be able to put together some sort of a smart home device, you think?
Yeah, and honestly, Jason, what it does is it builds kind of like a stepping stone to the point where it allows us to reach to Amazon, Google, and all those guys much easier. So for me, we've already looking into almost a dozen products that honestly would have taken me probably 3 times the amount of time to look into. And it's exactly that. It's a stepping stone to getting more into Amazon, Google, whoever else is leading the markets right now. even if pairing with Control 4 and type guys, they have stepping stones for everything they could really. And then, not to mention, speaking of the software side, they offer an app that they'll skin it for you, and they'll design it and program it for you, which, as you know, as a manufacturer standpoint, you've heard it a million times, the cost in that alone is very high.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely giving the manufacturers a leg up. It's allowing them to enter the market. It gives them all the hooks into the big companies without having to do the heavy lift themselves. And again, no recurring revenue fee. So it's a really good business model for a company to be able to get in and essentially hide, because nobody understands who Tuya is, because there is no Tuya product on the market, right? Tuya is a B2B play. Nobody's going to go and buy a Tuya product. They're going to buy an Energizer product or a Monster product or a Vanco product,
right?
And have no idea that they're actually using Tuya as their back end.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
Very interesting. All right, gentlemen, let's go on to one of the other splashes that was made at CES. This is something that we've been seeing for a while, but continues to make a ton of waves. 8K was everywhere, from LG's roll-up to a plethora of other displays and everything else, so much so that they announced a new 8K association, the 8KA. Mark, I want to start with you on this one. This pretty much is one of those topics that if you want to get a ton of competing opinions, just ask anybody in the industry about 8K, and they will happily tell you exactly where they stand, as we saw very extensively yesterday on AV and the AM. This new association has pretty much all the major players, with the exception of LG and Sony. Vanco does not manufacture, 8K displays. You could potentially be manufacturing or working towards other products that work within that play. But when we talk new displays, new resolutions and how they're deployed, that usually comes down to content and, essentially TVs, displays. Not having those two vendors on board yet, is that concerning to the movement, the forward movement of the 8K Association?
I think, Matt, that's just probably a matter of time, because honestly, from an HDMI standpoint, since, as you know, Vanco does a ton of HDMI manufacturing, 2.1 cables have come out. Now, 2.1 cables are HDMI 2.1 are able to support, an 8K signal. But here's the same issue you talked about before, or just recently. We don't have any devices really to test that with, unless we're using a Quantum or some kind of massive signal generator. There's no live feeds right now for us to really test those things. Now, I do think over a matter of time, you're going to see Sony and LG jump on board, because let's be honest, when 4K came out, I used to do presentations on it before I'm doing what I am now. And it was, let's be honest, it was a marketing. 4K technically was not even the 4K full spec when it first came out, and it was a very big marketing. It was a go-to-marketing strategy. I love it that 8K is coming into play. Is it relevant right now? Absolutely not. To be honest, it's funny. I just did something recently on how relevant is 4K in commercial, and we're hardly there yet, even in commercial. So I'm excited about 8K. It gives us a spin for new marketing, but I will have to say I think it's going to be quite some time before we see devices, and devices is where it has to start first.
Very good. Avi, I want to come to you. I had a long debate yesterday on Twitter about 8K. One of my favorite places to debate topics. But this is something that I'm excited about. I've dabbled in the NAB space, the National Association of Broadcasters, so I know how long they've had 8K capture devices, how long they've been building cameras. We know that NHK, I believe I got that right, out in Japan, has been broadcasting like 8 hours a day of 8K content in Japan. We sit here in North America and go, yeah, there's not enough 4K content, there's not enough of this, there's not enough of that. Why the heck do we care about 8K? Tell me why we should care about 8K, even if nobody can go buy a Blu-ray or watch something on Netflix in 8K. Tell me why I care.
I think the reason why you care is because it's a technological evolution, right? The idea is we're moving forward. It's sort of like, why did we stop at horse and buggies? Because the automobile came next. So once we had the automobile, why did we keep refining it, right? There is an argument to be made that we're refining the automobile just for the sake of refining it because we've gotten as good as it gets. I would disagree. I think we refine the automobile because we're always getting better. We're always getting more efficient. We're always getting more technology built into it. And I think 8K is exactly that. It's another step in the evolution. It's getting easier for the manufacturers to develop these things. And so they're showing off because they feel, as once has been famously said, if they build it, they will come. For a long time when we had 1080p, it was, well, why are you building 1080p? We don't have anything to display on it, right? So the difference is if they didn't build the 8K televisions, the content would never come. Mm-hmm. So I think the reason why you have to be excited about it is because if they're finally going to put it together and they're going to have displays, and to Mark's point, you already have the connectivity, you already have the transport of the content. Now it's just up to the distribution side. And they're going to figure out the distribution side very quickly. You've got fiber, you've got other things that are already in place that will support it. I think it's just a question now of the distribution of the content, the same way it's been a question of the 4K content. I don't look at 8K the way I did it 3D. 3D to me was a phase, was a fad. I think 8K is the natural evolution in the display technology. And the biggest proof I have of that is look what's going on in smartphone displays, how much better they're getting, how much richer they're getting, and how much people are starting to expect their handheld device to have that much of a better experience than the large visual display they have in their living room.
Very good.
And Matt, let me pick up on that. Let me tell you bottom line why integrators should care and why it's good to hear you excited about it. Wrote a story back in November of Just One Touch Video and Audio Center, retail, HTSA member out in LA. They did an 8K event, and in 4 hours they sold 19 85-inch, $15,000 or $14,000 and change Samsung TVs. Mm-hmm. $260,000 worth of 8K TVs for which there is no content.
Right.
So congratulations to them. That's why you should care. And then at CES, Samsung had 8K all the way down to a 55-inch. They were showing 5 different sizes. So I don't remember. I didn't hear the price point. Avi, I don't know if you saw the price point on that. I didn't catch it. But that's why you should care.
Right.
Yeah. And it's, the other thing that's interesting too is it's not a bandwidth issue. The biggest thing when 4K came out was, oh, geez, the bandwidth. And I think you guys all know that. Everyone was freaking out about the bandwidth and what HDMI could do. To his point, we have fiber now and we have HDMI over fiber. And 8K bandwidth there's no more bandwidth issues. That's for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes, it'll be very interesting to watch. And I have not ordered one yet. But don't think I'm not thinking about it. Let's move on to our next story of the day. This comes to us from Residential Tech Today. Smart Home Tech is taking over CES 2019. Yay! That was great, Avi. I love it. Which is fantastic because I'm starting with you.
Yep.
When you walk the floor at CES, mm-hmm. And again, the reason I'm starting with you is because this is your ballpark. This is what I know you for.
Yep.
What I wanted to know was, as somebody who lives and breathes this every day, was it so much that Smart Home was taking over CES, or do we just think that Smart Home is taking over CES because that's the color glass that we look through within this industry? We watch the decline of high-end audio that used to be such a focal point of CES. We used to watch, home theater and that type of thing be so strong at CES. That's all declined. Smart home has kind of taken its place. Has it taken over that much, or is it just because this is the industry we're in that we think that?
So I think it's a combination of things, right? The truth of the matter is there's just as much AV gear at CES as there always was. The difference now is CES is such a diverse program that it looks as if there's more stuff overshadowing the AV things. Now, you don't have an Alexis Park anymore, right? Back in the day, we'd all go around to those sound rooms and we would listen. And so I think that's a little bit of a shift on the high-end audio gear. But the truth of the matter is, all the big manufacturers are there for television and AV gear. I think what it boils down to, though, is 5 years ago, the show was so much smaller that the big booths in the central hall overshadowed everything else. The show now is, twice its size. The South Hall is here now. The Sands is all full. You've got Eureka Park. And the world that we live in is much more connected now than it was before. You could actually make an argument that health and wellness is taking over CES. You can make an argument that wearables are taking over CES. You can make an argument that automotive is taking over CES, right? I think each of those categories 5 years ago did not exist. And my hat's off to the folks at CTA for recognizing the fact that it's not just about the TVs and the speakers, that it's about the connected world. I'm excited about it because, again, as an integrator, this past year was my 29th CES. And for many years, I went, to see the latest and greatest television or the latest and greatest audio gear. But as my career morphed into the connected devices, I felt left out. Well, I'm not left out anymore. The Sands Expo Center, at least a third of it were smart home devices, my bread and butter. But the other 2/3 were just as interesting. Health and wellness, wearables, age in place, 3D printing is all coming up as well. And then downstairs in the Sands at Eureka Park was just a ton of great ideas, So I hear where the high-end integrator is saying to himself, is CES still relevant to me? And my answer to that is it's even more relevant. Yeah, Control4 doesn't show up. Everybody goes to Cedia, and I totally get that. But if you want to know what your consumers, what your customers are being exposed to in the media, you've got to come to CES because that's what they're hearing about. That's what they're seeing in their ads. That's what they're seeing in the big box stores. And you've got to understand it so that you can combine it with the stuff you're selling and fulfill your consumers' dreams.
Very good. Jason, is Avi right on that? Is that why we need to go? Because I would argue, looking at the slate of exhibitors, that yeah, I could go, but a lot of those smart home products don't fit my clientele.
Yeah, I mean, there's a portion of the show that I don't go to. I roamed very quickly through the North Hall with the automotive things and actually saw a really cool, one of what I think is one of the coolest things I saw at the show, which was a digital backsplash for the kitchen in the North Hall. Wasn't even in the smart home area. But I think Avi's right. And every security company that was there, every appliance company that was there, and of course, all of the smart home companies all had either the term smart home or connected home somewhere in their booth.
Right.
So, but he's right. You can make the same case for a lot of those other marketplaces, as CES calls them, that were also prevalent. By the way, I don't know if everybody saw that I was a star at the show.
You were. You got the front page.
The back of my head was on the front page of the Las Vegas Review Journal the second day.
Why do you think you're here today?
Taking a picture of a toilet. So if that wasn't apropos, I don't know what.
The highlight of your life, correct?
Well, by the way, that toilet, just so you know, Jason, we did one of my clients did a technology home, a home of the future. KB Home did a home of the future in Henderson, and they have those toilets in that house. And it reminded me so much of, if you remember the movie Demolition Man, where he's got the 3 seashells, and everybody's laughing at him because he doesn't know how to use the 3 seashells. Well, let me tell you, that Kohler toilet has got a control system in it that it took me a good 3 or 4 minutes just to determine how to move the seat around. So it's a very complicated piece of technology.
If you haven't seen that Kohler toilet, it is amazing.
It really is.
I don't know how we can get a sponsorship. There you go.
Exactly. I have no idea how I'm going to segue from 3 seashells and a Kohler toilet, but I'm going to. The last story I want to cover really quickly. This is something that's been around for a while. And Mark, I am going to start with you on this one. Amazon-owned Ring has been reportedly spying on its customers' camera feeds. This comes to us from BGR. Now, this is a story that has been around a couple of times. But what kind of made this one big was that essentially, supposedly, they've got everybody's videos just stuck in one folder on an S3 cloud storage, and all of their engineers and executives have access to it. Mark, when you see this, when you hear this, and I know you guys work with Amazon and have a good relationship there, what does this mean for end users, depending on how valid and how true this is? But what does this mean to end users thinking that there's a potential that every video from their doorbell cam to their Ring cam inside their home is open for anyone within that company to view?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not a good thing. I think it's awareness, right? How many people are aware, and then how many people really care. I mean, maybe a lot of people do not care. I think it's a bigger difference. We've been talking about, and I know Jason wrote something about this, but we've been talking about even Amazon, Alexa listening, Google listening. I think listening is kind of one thing. I think videos, you're talking kind of a whole different privacy. And we all know at some point, I think an Alexa is listening beyond when you command it to listen, because advertisements pop up and things pop up. But I think it's one of those things where video is crossing maybe a different line than just a voice command. And I think, Avi and Jason can talk more because they probably do a little more with it. But it surprised me a little bit on the video side. That was pretty shocking.
Jason, you've reported this in the past. I want to say back in March or something like that. But this has been a problem that's been around before. Why do people not get a chance to, really realize this? Why does this get just lost in industry press?
I think, as Mark said, a lot of the privacy barriers that people had in place when we were all growing up have really disappeared, with the social media environment. The one thing I'll remember from the story that I did back last spring, in order for anybody to use the content for marketing purposes and or for law enforcement to gain access to the video, the homeowner does have to write off on that. So in other words, Ring cannot give your front doorbell camera to the police because they want to check the street in front. The homeowner does have to write off on that giveaway to somebody else, or use, not giveaway, but use or viewing by somebody else. So there's a couple of, or at least some layer of a barrier in there. But again, the story that we did, whoever is recording the content owns the content.
Avi, I understand completely what Jason's saying, but should that make me as a consumer feel okay with this, that they're not encrypting my video, they're not making it, or they're not locking it down as much as possible? And I know from personal experience, we sell Ring. We've had situations where we've had problems with some of their stuff and got on the phone with their engineering department, and they can and have remoted in with just an email address. Now, of course, I gave them the client's email, but they were able to go, okay, now go in front of the camera and push the button. Yeah, we are getting that. Why isn't it going here? They could see that without, passwords and other things.
Right, without a token.
Should that concern us greater than it does?
So I think that it should. And then the reason why is because a company only has one chance at gaining the trust of their consumers. Once that trust is given up or that trust is broached, it's very hard to get back. You look at what happened with Target. It has taken them years to get over the fact that they had some credit cards stolen. And I think that companies really have to be sensitive to the fact that if they broach that trust with those consumers, there are huge ramifications. And so, I'm always guiding my clients to err on the side of openness, to change their EULAs not to be legalese, to fill them out and present them in a very simple way so the consumer understands completely what they're signing off on. And, to Jason's point, yeah, it takes another sign off to get to the police or another sign off to release it. But most consumers don't even realize that because they just check the box and they move on. And I think it's something that for education is happening right now in the industry. Data is the next great frontier that we have to deal with in privacy. Who owns it? Who keeps it? If you look at what goes on in the healthcare industry, it's all about, nobody can talk to anybody, right? So the pendulum swings the other way. But I think companies have to look at their policies and procedures very carefully, because if they give up that trust with that consumer, let's face it, there's 100 other companies out there making doorbell cameras. Mm-hmm. Amazon doesn't make the only one. Ring doesn't make the only one. There's someplace for the consumer to go if they feel more comfortable. And so they've got to make sure that they're making the consumers, feel comfortable with their decision.
So let me ask all three of you this, and anyone can chime in. What is our responsibility as professionals within this residential home technology base? What is our responsibility in selling these, advising our clients on these products?
Education. In my opinion, it's education. It's helping your consumer understand, your customer understand what they're signing off on and what the ramifications of it are.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, education's huge. And I think a lot of the things is, we're all thinking about doorbell as, or the Ring doorbell, but I'm sure this includes all the Nest cams that are set up within homes. And I mean, that education is probably not even out there, to be honest. So, yeah, that's huge.
Very
and
good.
Remember, as high-end integrators, we're the consultant to the installation, right? We're the consultant, we're the expert. And so it's our responsibility to make sure that our customers feel comfortable with their decisions.
Very good. All right, gentlemen, let's leave it there. We've run out of time. Thanks so much for joining us. I know you're all probably still recovering from the joys of CES for a week. Jason, if people want to connect with you, read all your coverage of CES, and obviously get more information about CE Pro, where can they go and do that?
They can go to cepro.com. In fact, we have a dedicated page for cepro.com/CES. They can find all their CES coverage, and they can follow me on Twitter, Jason W. Knott.
Excellent. Thanks again for joining us. Mark, as always, it's been a pleasure. If people want to connect with you, learn more about Vanco and the whole suite of products that you guys have now, where can they go and do that?
Absolutely. Please visit our website at vanco1.com or visit us on Twitter, LinkedIn at Vanco International, and Facebook as well.
Excellent. Thanks again.
Thank you, Matt.
Of course. Avi, as always, it's been a pleasure. If people want to connect with you, learn more about your new venture, CE IoT Partners, where can they do that?
Well, they can certainly do it on our brand new website, ceiotpartners.com. And I'm on Twitter at AVIRFL. So please join me there.
Excellent. Thanks again, gentlemen, for joining us. For myself, if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at Matt D. Scott on Twitter, currently ranting about 8K. But more importantly, please stop by AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek.